that's Half-Life 2. Alright, I'll do a little review. Um, I guess I'll start with the graphics. The graphics for this game, I mean, it's worth pointing out because this is a 2004 game, and the visuals for 2004 are really mind-blowing. Not just like in terms of aesthetics, but also in terms of like facial expressions and oh, thank you, X Infected, thank you, Kurthka. And you know when they are speaking, you know, at the time in 2004, you didn't see a lot of games that had that kind of detail with facial expressions and you know motion capture of you know convincing speech. So it helps create a more immersive cinematic experience. Um, and that's one thing that it carried over from Half-Life 1 well, the cinematic experience. Even though the storyline's kind of simple, like, as far as I can tell, it's just like aliens and weird things are going on, and, you know, that's about it. But, like, the way it's told, you know, I repeat this a lot in a lot of video games, but it really does matter the way a game tells you the story, even if it is simplistic and without a lot of depth. But you know, this game does expand a little bit, gives personality to a lot of the characters, like Barney, who he was actually in Half-Life 1, um, and he didn't have a lot of depth, but they really fleshed out his character in this one. The gunplay is much better in this game over Half-Life 1. That was my biggest complaint about Half-Life 1. The gunplay wasn't good, which makes sense because it was a Quake 1 game, and you know, it was still very early. This game modernizes that so that it's still it feels a lot better. Especially the gravity gun is considered one of the, like, whenever you see like a top 10 list of best weapons in video games, usually the gravity gun's in there somewhere because it turns like ordinary objects into weapons, which is pretty cool. Also, it mixes up the gameplay a lot, so you know, even if there's like a slow part or kind of like a boring, dragging part, you know, you can be confident that it's gonna change pretty soon and you're gonna start having fun again. So I guess that segues into the things I don't like about the game. There
Lamar,
are a lot.
Lamar,
Hold on.
blast that little. Where did she get to?
All right. So yeah. The worst thing about Half-Life 1, aside from the gunplay, were the environmental puzzles, the jumping puzzles. That's something that Duke Nukem Forever was criticized a lot about. Um, but I don't know why this game gets a pass on that, because the jumping puzzles and the obtuse level design really are problematic. And it's the same problem that Duke Nukem Forever had. So I don't know why this game gets a pass on it, but Duke Nukem Forever didn't. Too often, you know, like the level design was just kind of weird. I don't like it has like this large area. There's lots of places to go, but you don't really know where to go. Um, and yeah, platforming in in a first-person shooter, generally speaking, is terrible. I mean, they have improved it in modern times with Mirror's Edge and stuff like that. But back then, you know, it was as crappy as it ever was. So I didn't really like that. I also didn't like the environmental puzzles where you have to like take shit from the environment, put them down into this toxic waste pool, and then use that to kind of leapfrog your way to the other side or whatever. That was pretty annoying. Yeah, the flashlight, as Zax points out, it's unbelievably annoying. I mean, I guess you could solve the problem if you could adjust the brightness, but I guess since I'm running the game in windowed mode, I can't adjust the brightness, so I was always relying on the flashlight, and that thing's a piece of shit. Um, yeah, like X Infected mentioned, there are places that are really frustrating. You're forced to use that one turret section was awful. Those things are unbelievably unstable, and you have to rely on them to hold out against a never-ending swarm of enemies. There were a couple of stages like that which were kind of really frustrating, and the only way to get through it is just to like do well for like 2 seconds, then save, and then do well for another 2 seconds, kill some enemies, and then save, and just rinse and repeat. And yeah, that was really crappy. Um, but overall, yeah, it's a good game. I have to admit I was bored in some places. I think this game would be a lot more fun on the second playthrough once you know what to do. It is definitely improvement over Half-Life 1, but I can't say I agree with the sentiment that this is one of the greatest games of all time. Honestly, I played other FPS games that I consider to be better. So anyway, that's how I felt about it. So, what you guys think of the